Well, welcome to part 2. We ended part 1 with the train pulling into Oak Hill. So first thing we're going to do is switch Cedar Heights clay. Because I don't have much of a switching lead, I'm going to pull the 4 cars from the spur first. I'll be taking the 2 covered hoppers at the end back to Chillicothe and setting 1 covered hopper in its place. So I'll have to respot the 2 boxcars. I spent the past 3 days cutting down the Cleveland pear that was over the Garden Railroad. The leaves have always been a problem, but not that big. But this year there were thousands of tiny little pears that stay on the tree and drop. And once the frost hits, they become very soft, and it's just a icky, gooey mess over everything. First time it's ever done that. So I cut the tree down. Still got a huge mess to clean up. But I won't have that happen again. But our neighborhood is the same way. The developer planted a Bradford pear in everybody's front yard, and the sidewalk is just disaster to walk down. So I'm going to place the 2 covered hoppers I'm picking up on the passing siding. And then I can just go grab the covered hopper and spot on the Cedar Heights spur, and everything will be in good shape. Put the picture back in place for Cedar Heights clay. I'm making good progress on the building, but I can't really have it in place and work on it. I have to keep taking it in and out. So it's going to be a big building. It's going to be the biggest scratch build building that I've built for sure. now that I'm actually putting a building at Cedar Heights, you can see that spur has a little curve to it. I've got to straighten that out because it's, I've got to have a straight line to line up with all the loading doors. So I'll be straightening that out over the next day or so. I just glued it down with white glue, so if I wet it down, the track should release really easy. So now I'm going to grab the covered hoppers and put them back on the main, couple them onto the boxcar there, and then I'll run around the train. That boxcar is destined for Davis Firebrick, which you see the two cars in the foreground. I'm pulling the L&N car and replacing it with the chassis car. Sorry about the shaky camera. I'm not using the gimbal, and I wanted to try to show the locomotive going down the siding, and this thing just isn't easily adjustable. So I finally got to there and just said, heck with it. That's good enough. Even though this angle shows a fairly good view of the whole railroad, and I could have left the camera here to switch Davis Firebrick, I decided to go ahead and move it after this shot. So we're going to push down the spur and pull the boxcar. And since it will be attached to the covered hoppers, that's going to be my train going back to Chillicothe. So worked out pretty well. Davis Firebrick is going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I have pictures of the covered loading dock, which is what you're mainly going to see, but I don't have any really good pictures of the kilns behind it. And they didn't use the round beehive kilns like you see here. Well, they did at one time, but by the time I'm modeling, they'd torn them down and put a more modern kiln in. And so I don't have a really good picture of what that looks like, or a lot of space. All right, so we're going to push these 3 cars back down across Route 93, and then we can spot the chassis boxcar. I don't use that C&O caboose a lot because I'm mainly modeling B&O lines, and I don't really know how much cabooses really traveled on, even though they're all the chassis system. I don't know if cabooses were as free roaming as the locomotives were. But it's a nice little caboose. Actually, one of the last things that they did at the Chillicothe shops was they refurbished a bunch of cabooses, which I think were C&O cabooses, but they transferred them to the B&O, and they were painted in that yellow. But they had the B&O Capitol Dome and all that on them. And I can't get decals of the right color, or I would do that to this caboose. So what we're going to do now is just build the train to go back to Chillicothe. First thing I'm going to do is put the caboose on the passing siding in front of the depot, and then we'll go back and pick up the cars, pull them across Main Street, tack them onto the caboose, and head out of town. this view, when I'm sort of zoomed in, you can see the concrete block. That is from N-Scale Architect or Architecture, not sure. There's 2 sheets in a package, about $25. I think the sheets are maybe 11 by 14, something like that. And it's real thin stuff. I really would struggle building anything out of it. So basically I'm laminating it over styrene for the Cedar Heights clay building, but in this case I just glued it onto the balsa wood dock. And I've weathered it a little bit more since this picture. And I put a styrene angle around the top, because in pictures it looks like there's a angle there. If you look to the right where you can see the real loading dock, it obviously hasn't been painted in years. So when I have the better pictures I have are from the 80s. It was white like the buildings. All right, we've picked up the caboose. So now we can head out of town. Of course, we're going to have to stop on the way out of town to line the turnout. It always has to be lined for the main. And I could just go ahead and run and throw the turnouts, without stopping. Maybe cut a few seconds off the video, but this is a little bit more realistic. So we're heading back to Chillicothe. So as the train disappears around the bend, we'll end the video. Part 3 will be in the next couple days, and then there'll probably be a part 4 because there's a lot of work still to do in Chillicothe. Everybody stay safe.